Welcome to the third episode of the Haunted Mario podcast. On today's episode, we're going to go ahead and discuss two of the paranormal events that I attended within the last couple of weeks. The first event I'm going to be discussing is the Face Your Fears event that was hosted at the Glen Tavern Inn by Haunted Orange County, which is a team that I belong to, as well as Chad Lindbergh with Beyond Badass Paranormal, who is also part of the Haunted Orange County team. The second event that I will be discussing is the Pioneers of the Paranormal that was also held at the Glen Tavern Inn in Santa Paula, California. And that was hosted by Don Gomez with Haunted Entertainment, as well as Beyond Paranormal Investigations and Paranormal Boot Camp events. There's definitely a lot to discuss between these two events. We ended up capturing some pretty good EVPs at the Face Your Fears event, and there were a couple of captures at the Pioneers of the Paranormal event. So yeah, definitely a lot to cover between the two events. We're going to start off with the Face Your Fears event, of course. Now, the premise behind the Face Your Fears event was that, you paid for your tickets and you had the opportunity to get a room in the third floor, which is the most haunted floor at the Glen Tavern Inn. And then that night of the event, you have the opportunity to investigate basically the entire third floor. The premise was to investigate the entire third floor, room by room, one by one, until we got to the most haunted room, which is 307, and then do a slightly longer session with the group in room 307. And then after that was over, then every individual got the opportunity to do a solo session for about 10 minutes in room 307 with whatever equipment he or she wanted to use. That could have been, anything from digital cameras, digital voice recorders, dowsing rods, whatever the person felt comfortable with. So that was the premise of the evening. And then after the investigation was over, you would return to your designated room, and you would then, spend the rest of the evening and sleep the investigation off, per se. In the morning, myself and the haunted crew would help prepare a waffle breakfast. The waffles made by Ernie Alonso, the owner of Haunted Orange, which were fantastic, and it was a great breakfast, and everyone was discussing all of the events of the previous evening. There was definitely a sense of camaraderie between everyone. It seemed like everyone enjoyed the event, and a good breakfast, a great investigation, and we all kind of walked away as friends. I know we talked to other individuals in the group. Everyone got along. There weren't really any problems in the evening. And all in all, it was, just a great experience. Just to meet new people that are just as excited to investigate the paranormal, especially for a very historic and haunted location such as the Glen Tavern Inn. It's probably one of the most haunted places in the United States. It's definitely one of the most, in the top 5 of the most haunted places in California, for sure. And at that point, that would mark the second time that we had investigated at the Glen Tavern Inn. The year prior, we came out with a multitude of evidence, especially audio evidence. We even caught a weird shadow figure. This is, of course, last year, but the events of this investigation were different, and there was sort of like a different energy that was surrounding the third floor that evening, and we managed to capture some pretty awesome EVP. So we'll get into basically how the event progressed from beginning to end as far as the investigation is concerned. at which point I will then discuss and present to you some of the EVP evidence that we managed to capture at the Glen Tavern Inn in various rooms. Now, the evening basically started off with sign-in or check-in on the third floor. We all met at the landing on the third floor. We had seats set up for everyone, and then 308, which is I guess the grand suite of the third floor, definitely the biggest room on the third floor. We had snacks set out for everyone, and all of the guests attending were allowed to put their equipment all in room 308, where we also had basically a nerve center set up with a camera feed and audio feed from room 307 that continuously ran throughout the entire investigation, or throughout the entire event. So you could basically see what's going on at all times in that room. Since it is the most haunted room, we wanted to make sure that that room was covered, and if we captured anything, that it would show up on camera, but also show up on audio, if all possible. So the evening began with Ernie Alonso, of course, introducing himself, the Haunted Orange crew, and then basically walking through the plan of events for the evening. And then he introduced Chad Lindbergh, who was going to be the lead investigator for the evening. Now again, Chad Lindbergh has actually been on Ghost Adventures, and he has his own paranormal show called Ghost Stalkers. You can find information on his events at hauntedorangecounty.com, as well as badassparanormal.com, which is his website. But he introduced himself and basically told some stories about why he got into the paranormal field and what is it that interests him, and some of his experiences in the paranormal field. And then the group got introduced to Brandon Alvis from APRA. Brandon Alvis actually being the resident paranormal investigator at the Glen Tavern Inn. He's been living there for the last 2+ years. So he's experienced just about everything you can imagine at the Glen Tavern Inn, especially on the third floor. So he gave us some of his tips and experiences, and some of the history regarding the Glen Tavern Inn, and some of the deaths or purported deaths that have happened there, and whatnot. And then basically the event began. We all convened in room 308, where we started our very first session. And it's very simple 20-25 minute session in each room that we did. So we started in 308. We ran through Spirit Box for about, I would say, 5 to 10 minutes max. Then we went through an EVP session, going around in a circle, introducing ourselves by name, and then asking various questions. After which we did a live review where we tried to see if any EVPs came through. Very simple EVP sessions, Spirit Box sessions, just to kind of get warmed up for the evening. And then we moved on from that room. Once the time was over, we moved on to room 301. Now, 301 was pretty special. We were joined by a third special guest investigator, Jorge Diaz from the movie Paranormal Activity, who has actually done quite a few events with Haunted Orange County. So it was great to have him join us for the evening and partake in the investigations along with everyone. So we went to room 301, which was the room that he was staying in. We started a really quick Spirit Box session, and everyone got to ask questions all the way around. We kept everything really immersive so that everyone could participate. I mean, people paid good money, so they wanted to investigate, and everyone was there to find something paranormal. So it was a great event, and we moved forward with 301. We're asking questions, not really getting too many responses through Spirit Box, and then we move forward to another EVP session. And then just the weirdest things just start happening in room 301. When we start reviewing the EVP recordings, doing live reviews, we started hearing very subtle responses to, different questions, and it appears like we are actually getting EVP responses. Now, these were reviewed through Chad Lindbergh's recorder. They weren't reviewed through my recorder. Unfortunately, in room 301, we did not end up capturing any EVP, or at least nothing that I can present to you on this podcast that would be substantial for me to consider it a Class A. Again, when I present EVPs or audio evidence here on this podcast, I want it to be of the best quality. Not that I edit the EVPs, but if you're going to present an EVP, then you want it to be loud, you want it to be clear. You definitely don't want an EVP to come through that's a Class C where you can barely hear what's being said, and then you're just making guesses at what the spirit or entity might be trying to tell you. So I only present Class A's so that you get the best, the cream of the crop evidence that the paranormal has to offer. So in room 307, we are definitely getting some pretty good activity. At some point, it felt like there was a little girl that had walked into the room. Some of us in the group were sensitive, and we felt like a little girl had walked into the room, and she was just there kind of hanging out, observing. Unfortunately, the EVP that we captured of this individual, and I'll get into that in a moment, but the EVP that we captured for this individual was not it wasn't a Class A EVP. It wasn't even a Class B. It was a Class C. It was very faint. But the story behind that is actually really compelling. And hopefully one of these days I can just post it on the website and then let people just listen to the EVP, as many times as they want. And hopefully they can hear exactly what I heard. But that was a very special EVP capture, and I'll get into the story here in just a moment. So as I explained, we did have a couple of people in the group that are sensitives, that are psychic mediums or do channeling, and they were able to pick up on this little girl. Now, myself, I am somewhat sensitive to spirits in general, but it's very weird how it started with myself. It's sort of a version of clairvoyance where I see flashing images in my head of a certain person or a certain moment in time for them. Sometimes it's very current, and sometimes it's just a very still image of that person from way back when. In this instance, we were trying to figure out who this little girl was that had felt like she had just entered the room and was kind of like circling around looking at everyone, and we were just trying to kind of figure out what her name was. So everyone was asking, what's your name, how old are you, do you live here, and so on. Well, at some point I kept getting the name Delilah getting repeated in my head over and over and over again. And, I told the investigators, for some reason I'm getting the name Delilah. I don't know why, but that's just the name that keeps popping up in my head. And so we continue on with the event and basically finish up in room 301, and move on for the evening on to room 302. Well, before I get to room 302, in room 301, when I was getting the name Delilah, this wasn't something that I was hearing audibly. It was a name that just kind of popped up in my mind, and it just kept being repeated, like I said, over and over again. Well, when I went back and reviewed our audio recordings from that event in room 301, at some point, this was, I don't know, 3 to 4 minutes before I even acknowledged the name Delilah, about 3 to 4 minutes beforehand, I believe Chad Lindbergh asked who lives in this room. And very faintly and very subtly, you hear a female voice that sounds like a little girl whisper the name Delilah. Now, I thought when I heard that at first, I had to pause. I had to replay it. I don't know how many times. It must have been at least 15 times, just playing over and over again, trying to make sure that what I was hearing was the name Delilah. And without saying anything at all to my wife, who was also attending the event and was assisting myself and Chad and the Haunted Orange crew with the investigation, I just simply played the clip for her. I did not tell her exactly what I was hearing. In fact, I didn't tell her anything about what I was hearing. I just said, listen to this. You're going to hear a whisper and tell me what you think it's saying. And it only took her about 2 or 3 listens for her to just say, I'm hearing the name Delilah. And I got goosebumps on my arms. I even have goosebumps right now just thinking about it, because it was so incredible. This is not the first time that we have caught an EVP of a person's name minutes before or even seconds before I get this name in my head, and then I just blurt it out because it just keeps getting repeated over and over in my head. Now, it's a great find for what happened in that room, and there is a little more to that I will get into. But as far as the EVP goes, unfortunately, it's not a Class A EVP. It's not even a Class B that I can present to you to be able to listen to it, to discern for yourself if you yourself are hearing the name Delilah. Now, obviously, I've told you what I hear, but it just seems weird that that name would come up before I even think of it. So, it was a very, very awesome find for that specific room. Now, what was added on to that was, like I said before, I have this sort of weird clairvoyance thing going on. I have no control over it, but the more I do investigations, the stronger it gets, and the more clear the images become, and the more information I'm able to get. And I always have some sort of evidence to back that up, and it always seems to correlate directly to what I'm actually seeing. Now, what was extra special about room 301 was that on top of the EVP that we captured of the girl saying her name Delilah, and then subsequently myself getting the name in my head and then blurting it out to everyone, at the same time I was getting these flashing images of this little girl and what she actually looked like. Now, the special thing that I tend to experience a lot, especially with my wife, who is also sensitive to these sort of spirit activity or clairvoyance, but in her own similar way to mine, what we tend to see tends to match a lot. So what we've begun doing at these investigations when that happens is we basically write down what we see, but don't show it to each other. So I'll write down exactly what I'm seeing, and then she'll write down separately what she's seeing, and then we don't show it to each other. And then at some point, probably during a review of evidence, or even later on in the evening at some point, we kind of swap that information and see if they match. Now, in this case, what I was seeing was a lot more descriptive compared to her. But what was really crazy was the very first thing that I noticed about the little girl was that she had really long blonde hair. And when we were exiting room 301, I asked my wife and the other psychic medium, her name is Mariah, I asked them, did you see a little girl? And my wife goes, yeah, I saw a little girl and she was blonde. And I hadn't told her or anyone in the room what the girl looked like, especially hair color or anything like that. But that kind of it threw me off a little bit, and I told my wife, I said, no, wait, don't tell me anymore. Just go ahead and write down what you saw, and then we'll swap information later on. Well, the next day, she had her little notepad with the stuff that she saw in regards to the girl, and then I handed her mine. Now mine was that she had long blonde hair. It was very messy, like it hadn't been combed in a long time. She was wearing this white sort of summer dress with these red flowers on it all over the dress. It was these red flowers, and the center of the flowers were yellow, and then there were all kinds of like green leaves or vines everywhere, and the dress itself was white in color. And she had this silver necklace locket thing that she was wearing, and she was barefoot, and her feet and her knees were like really dirty, like she'd been out playing for a long time. And then her eyes were green, and she had this sort of upward pointing nose, and every time that I saw her, she had her head tilted up like she was looking at everyone in the room. And that's basically what I wrote down on my sheet of paper. Well, when I went to get my wife's paper and she handed me hers, we swapped them at the same time, so obviously there wouldn't be any tampering of what we saw. And she was reading mine, and then I started reading hers, and hers had written down blonde hair, green eyes, wearing a dress, and her head was tilted up, looking at everyone. Now obviously she didn't go into what the dress looked like, or the silver locket, or that she was barefoot or anything like that, but even just the things that she saw compared to what I saw, almost everything she saw, actually everything that she saw, matched exactly what I saw. And I thought that was incredibly fantastic. I always love that we can get correlating or matching information. It's not the first time that this has happened, especially at the Glen Tavern Inn. In fact, the year prior, in room 307, we both saw the same female spirit in the closet of room 307. And there's a really cool story behind that. That was actually validated by Brandon Alvis himself almost a year after that event. But I'll get into that story on a different podcast when I revisit some of the old investigations that we've done. But for this one, it was this Delilah girl, and she made her presence known, and it was probably one of the best experiences that I've had at the Glen Tavern Inn so far. And wow, what an incredible, piece of evidence to go with it. Obviously not a Class-A EVP, but when you put it together with everything that happened in that room and in the order that it happened in, it all correlates, and it's fantastic to get that kind of response from those that are no longer with us. And yeah, I mean, what else can I say about that personal experience other than it was just phenomenal? And then we moved on to 302. And 302 was quite special as well, but for a very different reason that almost correlates with what happened in 301 in some odd way, shape, or form, but we haven't entirely figured it out. But I do have an EVP recording from that room that I will play so that you can hear what we all heard in that room when we were investigating. So, we continued on to room 302, and we started conducting the EVP session in there as well. At various points throughout the EVP session, and as we were kind of conversing with ourselves, we kept hearing what sounded like singing, and we kept trying to figure out what it was that was causing the noise. It was very audible, but it sounded like a little girl or like a woman singing. Now, I don't know if it was the little girl Delilah that was in room 301, but it definitely sounded like a female voice that was humming or singing. Now, we thought at first it was the pipes in the building, but there was no one on the third floor using any of the rooms. And the reason I know it was not the pipes was due to the fact that the following week, when we attended the Pioneers of the Paranormal event, there were people that were on the second floor using the facilities, I don't know if they were flushing the toilet or taking a shower, but it was so extremely loud to hear that through the pipes that what we heard in room 302 the week prior, what we initially thought was singing, had to have been singing, because the pipes are so loud in that inn, and the plumbing is old, so the pipes are really loud. You can hear the water rushing through, you can hear them creaking, whining, moaning. So what we were hearing was a lot of singing, and it definitely wasn't the pipes. It wasn't someone outside. At this point, I don't know, it was probably 10 o'clock in the evening, or almost 10 o'clock in the evening, so it was not like there were people hanging around outside being loud and making noise. That wasn't the case. We were in a very controlled environment, and we were doing our best to tag every single noise that we were hearing. But this singing just kept coming through, and at various points while we were talking, it just seemed like whoever was singing was not really paying attention to us. Like, they were just singing, probably doing whatever they did when they were alive, and like we were non-existent to them. So to me it seemed more like a residual type of occurrence rather than an intelligent type of haunt. It was very fascinating, and I hope that some of the other investigators ended up capturing that on their audio recordings, because we certainly did on ours. And I'm going to go ahead and play the best clip that we have of the singing for you. Again, just like the last time, I'll play it 3 times, and then I'll discuss it just a little bit, and then this time I'll replay it a couple of times additionally, so that you can hear it again, and it's pretty cool what you'll hear. So I'm gonna cue that up and play that for you now. Now what you can hear is a very loud AC unit that was running. We wanted to keep the room kind of cool, so that a lot of people stuffed in one room, it can get pretty stuffy, pretty hot. So we had the AC on to prevent people from overheating. But what you hear is the AC unit, but within that noise you'll hear a female humming or singing, and what it sounds like to me is weird that we were hearing that, and every time we heard it, it was like a different tone. It was never the same humming, or at least the same song, whatever the spirit was singing, was not the same tune. It's like they were singing one continuous song, but we were catching different parts of it at different times. And in this instance, this is the best piece of audio that we have in regards to that. So I'm going to replay it again 3 more times so that you can get, now that you know what you're listening for, you can hear the actual singing that I'm talking about. And again, this is a really cool find, so I'm going to go ahead and play that for you one more time. So there you have it. Once again, an incredible find. A Class A disembodied voice of a woman singing. Now, could this have been Delilah, the girl in 301, that perhaps followed us into room 302 and was just kind of singing? Or was this a completely different spirit that just resides in room 302, that what we were hearing was something residual, just kind of repeating over and over again? Now, what's special about it is that one of the claims at the Glen Tavern Inn, and Brandon Alvis can back this up, with audio recordings that they have caught, at various areas of the Glen Tavern Inn, where you can hear females singing, at random times. It's one of the more famous claims at the Glen Tavern Inn, and that's why this find was very special to us. So that's our first awesome piece of evidence, but we do have a couple of other EVP clips that we're going to share in regards to a couple of the other rooms that we conducted EVP sessions in as well. Now, as the night progressed and we moved on to 303, 303 did have some pretty cool activity with Spirit Box. We were getting some responses. We were just kind of we didn't want to repeat the exact same thing per each room. We did do a lot of the same type of investigative techniques. A lot of the people that were there were experienced. I think we had 2 guests that had never done any paranormal investigations before, and this was their first time. So, we're just kind of going through the ropes or going through the motions, but we were getting a lot of activity and it was pretty active. So everyone was kind of pumped for the fact that we were actually getting paranormal activity. I know Chad had been poked a few times or touched a couple of times, and that actually did happen in room 303. But unfortunately, from room 304 and 305, we didn't capture any audio evidence or visual evidence to correlate with some of the paranormal experiences that we had. Now, unfortunately, the room that we were staying in, 305, that was, for some reason, was kind of like a neutral zone on the 3rd floor. Like, there was 0 activity happening in 305, and I honestly expected 305 to be super active. I was gonna go to sleep that night with one eye open, keeping a lookout for any ghosts or spirits that might be lingering around inside our room. But strangely enough, nothing happened. We didn't get anything on audio. We didn't get anything visual that night. We didn't experience any weird paranormal activity. But nonetheless, we moved on to 306 and 307, and we did have some pretty cool experiences in those rooms. In 306, we had a lot of weird occurrences where we would hear sort of like knocking on the door, or like knocking on the wall in the hallway, and then we check and there was no one around on that floor. It was very weird. But the next audio clip that I'm going to play for you, which was captured in 306, was directly correlating to those weird knocking sounds that we were hearing. Now, we were hearing knocking sounds at one point, and then they just kind of stopped. And Chad Lindbergh decided to ask the spirit to knock for us again so that we could hear it on command. And then we capture, after he asked that question, you hear him knock, and then you hear a voice come through saying something. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip. There's another Class-A EVP. I can clearly make out what is being said, but I'm going to let you guys be the judge first, and then I'll tell you what I think I'm hearing, or what I know I'm hearing, and then I'll replay the clip 3 more times so you can hear exactly what I'm hearing in the audio. Now I'm going to play that for you right now.
Can you knock on the walls for us? Again? Can you knock on the walls for us? Again? Can you knock on the walls for us? Again?
So yeah, that's a pretty awesome EVP. After he knocks, you hear a voice whispering 2 words, and the words that I'm hearing that I know are being spoken are "I can't." And that's an intelligent response to what Chad Lindbergh is asking. And again, what he's asking is for the spirit to knock. He knocks, and then you hear the response saying, "I can't." So I'm gonna play the clip for you one more time, except for this time I'm going to just isolate the "I can't" portion so you can hear that repeated. And I'll play it for you 3 more times so that you can hear the EVP. Alright, here we go. And there you have it. Very clearly you hear the voice saying, "I can't." That's an incredible find, and that was the only EVP capture that we got in room 306. And what an incredible piece of evidence. So once we finished off in 306, we moved on to the most haunted room at the inn, which is room 307. And in that room we did get a lot of activity. It just seemed like something was observing us the entire time, and there were like random knocks. We did capture a couple of EVPs, but I'm going to play for you the best EVP that was captured that evening, but I'll get to that one in a moment. Now, as we're investigating in the room, we spent a little more time in that room. At this point, we were full on investigating. I had my full spectrum camcorder recording. We were running dual digital voice recorders. An investigator was using dowsing rods that we had let them borrow for, asking questions and whatnot. And those seemed to be getting some reaction. And then Chad Lindbergh, of course, was leading the investigation with, spirit box sessions. And, we were just trying to gather up as much activity as we could possibly get. And it was a really cool experience to get to investigate with him and everyone in attendance for the event. And then we finished off and we met back at 308, which was the nerve center, where we had the IR camera running continuously and the audio. We had a large boom mic set up by the closet so that you could capture all the noise and sound in that room. And so we were listening to that, and at this point I think it was probably midnight or so, or maybe a little past midnight, and it was time for us to conduct the Face Your Fears portion of the event, where each individual had the opportunity to go solo into room 307. And the way that we control this is that the hallway on the third floor has two sets of double doors that you can close to basically block off access to the hallway or to the rooms if you want to. And so the lights are off in all of the rooms. All the room doors are open. And you basically had to go through the first set of double doors. You had to pass room 301, 302, and 303 before you got to the second set of double doors. And then you would, open them up and continue down the hallway and pass rooms 304, 305, and 306 before entering the very last room at the end of the hallway, room 307. I'll tell you one thing. Walking down that hallway by yourself in the dark with every room open is very nerve-wracking, because you walk by each room and I don't know if it's just your nerves getting to you, but it seems like there is someone in each doorway staring right at you and just kind of looking at you and just observing you walking through the darkness. And these entities are probably just kind of laughing their butts off, like, look at this little scaredy cat walking down the hallway in the dark. But anyway, so each person got to go through and investigate on their own in room 307 for about 10 minutes each. And they were allowed to take whatever equipment they wanted that they felt comfortable with using and see if they can get anything. Different people experience different things. There is one recording that we caught in 307 that unfortunately is not a Class-A EVP. Again, I only present the best of the best. So one of the first timers ever to paranormal investigating, his name is Gillian, and he was in room 307 and he's sitting on the bed. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he goes, "Oh," and he kind of jumps back a little and he's like, "Oh, someone just touched my shoulder." Well, the great part is that we caught an EVP because he was using one of our recorders, and we caught an EVP right before he gets touched on the shoulder. You hear a female voice say, "Hey there." Now, if you know anything about the Glen Tavern Inn, the third floor of the Glen Tavern Inn, when it was built during the Prohibition era, it was a speakeasy, gambling parlor, and brothel. So it seems like that Gillian, who was in the room by himself, had a female approach him, touch him on the shoulder, but before doing that, kind of give him a "hey there," like, "Hey there, sexy." I know it sounds funny, but it was a really cool capture, and one of the very few captures, surprisingly, that we got that evening, because unfortunately, other than that EVP, the only other EVP we caught, which is an excellent Class-A EVP, which I will play for you shortly, we didn't get anything else other than that. So this EVP that I'm about to play for you, this one was captured during my wife's solo session during the Face Your Fears portion. And astonishingly, this EVP, and the only EVP capture of that specific session, is captured literally 1 second into her turning the recorder on. And she had 2 recorders with her, and this is only captured on 1 recorder, because I don't know for what reason it chose to come up on one recorder over the other when she was holding both of them. But she presses the record button, and you hear her doing her basic introduction, recording 307, blah, blah, blah. Well, as she's talking, you hear a female voice come through very clearly, and I'm going to go ahead and play the clip for you now, and you can hear what is being said, and then I'll tell you what I hear and why this intelligent EVP that comes through is very awesome, and it's one of my favorite captures of the night. So I'm going to go ahead and play that now so you can hear it. Here we go.
Setting down recorder in room 307. Setting down recorder in room 307. Setting down recorder in room 307.
So what you'll hear is her giving her introduction, and within her talking, you hear a second female voice speaking over her, and the female voice sounds like it's saying, "Hi, Cassie." Now, my wife's name is Cassandra, but everybody calls her Cassie. So how would the spirit know that her name is Cassie? And that was an incredible Class A EVP. I'm going to go ahead and play it for you a few more times so you can hear. Again, as she's talking, you're gonna hear my wife's voice, and then you'll hear the EVP come through saying, "Hi, Cassie." So here we go again. I'm gonna play it a few more times.
Setting down recorder in room 307. Setting down recorder in room 307. Setting down recorder in room 307. Setting down recorder in room 307.
So there you have it. It's a pretty awesome capture, and definitely the best one of that evening. Now, after her session was over, I was the last one to go up in room 307. Unfortunately, I didn't feel anything weird in the room. I did hear like a weird knock behind me when I was sitting in the closet. That was captured on audio, but it could have been the wood in the closet settling, or it could have been piping from the second or first floor. It was very hard to tell. So that basically does it for the Face Your Fears event at the Glen Tavern Inn, and we definitely had a fantastic time there. As I said, the next morning we had a big breakfast with everyone in attendance, and that was a really cool experience. We took pictures, some of us exchanged information, and yeah, I mean, nothing but good things to say about that event. It went very well, and it looked like everyone left happy, and hopefully others in the investigation ended up capturing as much, if not more, evidence than we ended up capturing. Okay, so now we can move forward with the Pioneers of the Paranormal event. Now, for that event, it was sort of a 2-day thing. When you bought your tickets, it was sort of a conference. It was going to have a meet and greet on the Friday, as well as karaoke, which we did not partake in, but I could hear the singers downstairs, and it sounded like everyone was having a great time. The next day was vendors and speakers event at the conference. They used the hall at the Glen Tavern Inn for the speakers, and then the lobby area for the vendors. And the vendors had a lot of nice stuff. I did buy a few things, including a laser grid, which is a new addition to our equipment. We didn't get to use it that evening, but we will definitely be using it for future investigations. And the speakers were all people that I had heard speak before, and they were great. And the vendors had a lot of cool items, and everyone was really nice and courteous and respectful. And then later on in the evening came time for the event, or the main event, which is the paranormal investigation. And so, almost similar to what we did with Haunted Orange County, with having access to the third floor, and there were groups that were divided and put in each room. Only because this is a larger group, we were split into 4 separate smaller groups, and basically investigating simultaneously within each room. So, we got 45 minutes in room 307, while the other 3 groups were in rooms 304, 305, and 306 respectively. Unfortunately, while the event was a great one, we did not end up capturing any kind of audio or visual evidence, and unfortunately that evening we didn't really feel any paranormal activity going on. It seemed like the energy had kind of died down. We did revisit room 305, which was the room we had stayed in the week prior for the Face Your Fear events, and nothing was going on. It was just as neutral as it had been the week prior. Suffice it to say that the evening ended, and we, didn't seem like we caught anything, and after reviewing our recordings and all of our data, we unfortunately didn't capture anything. So, great people there. Don Gomez with Haunted Entertainment, again, Paranormal Boot Camp, and Beyond Paranormal Investigations. Those people are great, very respectful, very courteous, very kind. Nothing but good things to say about them. We're definitely looking forward to attending events with those groups in the future, as well as returning to the Glen Tavern Inn at some point to get another shot at the 3rd floor, or even the entire inn, because that place to me is one of the best locations to investigate. If you want all kinds of activity, that place delivers just about every time. So it was great sharing my experiences with you once more. And just as always, if you're interested in learning more about the paranormal and about our investigations, you can go to hauntedmario.com, as well as check out my YouTube channel where I post all of our investigations that we conduct. Or if you're interested in haunted history tours as well as paranormal investigation events, you can visit hauntedorangecounty.com or hauntedoc.com. There is a link on my website that will take you directly to that site, and you can check out all the latest events that we conduct through them. So thank you very much for listening. We're going to go ahead and sign off now, and once again, I hope I've given you insight into all things paranormal. And until next time, happy hauntings.